In October 2025, General Motors announced the permanent closure of its CAMI assembly plant in Ingersoll, Ontario, once a symbol of Canada's electric vehicle ambitions. The news sent shockwaves through the country, igniting fierce debate about foreign investment, corporate responsibility, and the future of Canadian manufacturing. For thousands of families, it was a moment of fear and uncertainty, quickly escalating into a national crisis that tested the resolve of government, unions, and communities. The closure became the catalyst for a dramatic shift in Canada's approach to trade and investment, setting the stage for a high-stakes confrontation that would redefine the rules for doing business in Canada. For decades, the CAMI plant was the economic heart of Ingersoll, supporting families and local businesses alike. Its transformation into Canada's first large-scale electric vehicle facility, producing bright-drop vans, was celebrated as a triumph of innovation and public-private partnership. Workers adapted to new technology, proud to be part of a cleaner, greener future. The plant's closure shattered that dream, putting government investments in the town's future at risk. What was meant to be a blueprint for Canada's industrial strategy now cast doubt on the nation's ability to compete in the global EV market. The loss left a community and a country questioning what went wrong with their vision for the future. On October 21, 2025, GM made the closure permanent, ending hope for over 1,200 workers. The company blamed weak demand for bright-drop vans, calling it a tough business decision. But in Canada, few accepted this explanation. Unifor, the union, pointed to U.S. protectionism and Trump-era tariffs as the real reason, arguing Canadian jobs were sacrificed for American political gain. Local leaders echoed this, seeing the closure as a betrayal of the partnership that had retooled the plant for a new era. The timing aligned too closely with U.S. political agendas to be coincidence. For Ingersoll, it felt like their livelihoods were pawns in a much larger game. The closure devastated Ingersoll, wiping out over 200 high-paying jobs and threatening the town's economic fabric. Workers lost not just income, but identity and purpose. Careers that had supported families for generations. Local businesses, from diners to suppliers, faced immediate hardship as spending plummeted. The mental health toll was severe, with rising anxiety and uncertainty spreading through the community. Yet, amid despair, solidarity grew. Residents rallied around affected families, demanding action and refusing to let their town fade away. The crisis forged a spirit of defiance and unity, fueling a fight for survival. All eyes turned to the union and government for a response. The Canadian government responded with unprecedented speed and force. Within days, Prime Minister Mark Carney unveiled the Auto Diminishment Framework, a targeted 25% tariff on vehicles imported from automakers that cut Canadian production. The policy directly penalized companies like GM and Stellantis, slashing their duty-free quotas and making U.S.-made vehicles far more expensive for Canadian consumers. The message was clear: market access now required a real commitment to Canadian jobs. This marked a historic shift from offering incentives to demanding accountability. The framework fundamentally changed the cost-benefit equation for automakers considering leaving Canada. It was a bold gamble, signaling Canada would no longer accept the hollowing out of its industrial base. The new framework sent shockwaves through Detroit's automakers. For decades, these industry giants had operated with a sense of security, confident in their ability to make decisions that prioritized profits above all else. But now, the rules of the game had changed overnight, and the impact was immediate and profound. GM's financial rationale for closing Ingersoll collapsed under the weight of new tariffs, forcing a rapid strategic rethink. The company, once certain that shuttering the plant would boost its bottom line, suddenly faced mounting costs and public backlash. Executives scrambled to assess the damage, realizing that their calculations had failed to account for the new political and economic realities. Stellantis, already penalized for moving Jeep production, faced even harsher consequences and replaced its Canadian CEO in a bid to repair relations. The leadership shakeup was a clear signal. The company needed to rebuild trust with both the Canadian government and its workforce. The stakes were higher than ever, and Stellantis could no longer afford to treat its Canadian operations as an afterthought. Ford, though not immediately affected, was put on notice. Any future cuts would trigger the same penalties. The message was unmistakable. The era of easy cost-cutting at the expense of Canadian jobs was over. Ford's leadership began to reconsider their long-term strategies, knowing that every decision would now be scrutinized by both the government and the public. The policy flipped the power dynamic. Now, auto executives scrambled to negotiate with government and unions to avoid devastating losses. Boardrooms that once echoed with talk of efficiency and shareholder value now buzzed with urgent discussions about compliance, diplomacy, and damage control. The automakers were forced to listen to voices they had long ignored. Canada's bold move forced automakers to see their Canadian operations as essential, not expendable. The country's skilled workforce, advanced facilities, and strategic location were suddenly recognized as critical assets, not just line items on a balance sheet. The narrative had shifted, and so had the priorities of the industry's biggest players. The conversation shifted from, "How much can we save by leaving?" to, "What must we do to stay?" For the first time in years, automakers were compelled to invest in their Canadian presence, collaborate with local partners, and innovate to secure their future. The rude awakening had set the stage for a new era, one where Canada's role in the auto industry could no longer be ignored. Unifor, under the determined leadership of Lana Payne, launched an aggressive and highly visible campaign to save the Ingersoll plant from closure. The stakes were enormous, not just for the workers whose livelihoods were on the line, but for the entire community that depended on the plant's economic activity. The union's message was clear: the loss of these jobs would devastate families, local businesses, and the broader region. Unifor mobilized its members, organized rallies, and made sure their voices echoed far beyond the factory gates. They framed the closure as a national crisis, pointing to U.S. protectionism and shifting trade policies as root causes. The union argued that Canadian workers were being unfairly targeted and that the government needed to step up to defend its own citizens. This wasn't just a local issue, it was a test of Canada's resolve to protect its manufacturing base in the face of global pressures. Through relentless public campaigning, Unifor kept the story in the national spotlight. They organized press conferences, gathered signatures for petitions, and rallied supporters from across the country. Their efforts built widespread public support, putting immense pressure on both GM and government officials to find a solution. The union's ability to galvanize public opinion was crucial in keeping the issue alive and urgent. Behind the scenes, Unifor's leadership worked tirelessly. Meeting with government officials and industry stakeholders, they pushed for strong accountability measures, demanding that any public support for the auto industry come with ironclad commitments to Canadian jobs. These negotiations were tense and complex, but Unifor refused to back down, insisting that workers' interests be placed at the center of any deal. Their efforts were instrumental in shaping the auto diminishment framework, a new policy designed to protect workers and communities from sudden plant closures. By aligning union pressure with political will, Unifor helped create a blueprint for how labor and government could work together to safeguard the future of Canadian manufacturing. For Unifor, the fight was about more than just jobs. It was about demanding that corporations honor their commitments to Canadian workers and the communities that support them. The campaign became a rallying cry for fairness, dignity, and respect, not only for those inside the plant, but for everyone whose lives were touched by its presence. Unifor's relentless advocacy eventually forced GM back to the negotiating table. Their determination set a new standard for labor's role in shaping industrial policy, showing that when workers stand together, they can influence even the largest multinational corporations. The union's stand became a rallying point for a new social contract, one that demanded accountability, fairness, and a shared future between workers, communities, and multinational corporations. The fight for the Ingersoll plant was just the beginning of a broader movement for justice in the global economy. The combined force of government tariffs, introduced in a bold move to protect Canadian jobs and industry, sent shockwaves through the automotive sector. These measures were not just numbers on paper, they represented a clear signal that Canada was ready to defend its economic interests, even if it meant standing up to global giants like GM. At the same time, union pressure mounted on the ground. Workers, united in their determination, organized picket lines and strikes, making their voices impossible to ignore. The combination of government action and grassroots activism brought GM back to the negotiating table within weeks, forcing the company to reconsider its plans. Suddenly, the conversation shifted. Instead of discussing layoffs and closures, the focus turned to reopening the plant and restoring hope to the community. The reopening was more than a business decision. It was a lifeline for families and a testament to the power of collective action. For GM, the cost of losing access to the Canadian market one of its most important, proved too high to ignore. The threat of tariffs and the loss of loyal customers forced the company to rethink its strategy, highlighting the importance of the Canadian workforce and consumer base. This crisis marked a true turning point in Canadian industrial policy. It was a moment when the country realized it could no longer rely on goodwill or incentives alone to secure its future. From now on, Canada would demand enforceable commitments from multinational corporations. New agreements would be built on accountability, ensuring that promises made to Canadian workers and communities would be kept. This new approach sent a powerful message to all multinational companies operating in Canada. The days of easy market access without responsibility were over. Companies would have to prove their commitment to Canadian prosperity. Market access now came with clear obligations. Trade agreements and contracts would be enforced, ensuring that foreign investment truly benefited Canadians and their communities. The Ingersoll saga became a rallying point, emboldening Canada to demand more from foreign investors. Communities across the country saw what was possible when they stood together and insisted on fair treatment. The result was not just the reopening of a plant, but a renewed sense of pride and optimism. Canadian workers celebrated, families felt secure, and local businesses began to thrive once again. The fight for the plant became a powerful symbol of resilience and strategic power. It showed that when labor, government, and community unite, they can challenge even the largest global corporations. This unity proved that Canada could chart its own course, protecting its industries and people in the face of global pressures. The victory inspired other communities to organize and demand their fair share. In the end, Canada emerged stronger than before, with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. The country had shown the world that it would not back down. With a new assertive identity on the world's economic stage, Canada now stands ready to shape its own future, one built on fairness, strength, and the unwavering spirit of its people.